Marco Sturm is back in Boston, but he's not here to relive the past. He is here to help reshape the future.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoke to Beat. Today is Friday, June 6th, and thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your day every day. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at Monarch Money for 50% off your first year. On today's episode, we are continuing to break down the hiring of Marco Sturm as head coach. He's back, not wearing a jersey, but wearing a suit behind the bench, tasked with guiding the franchise through a pivotal transition. We're diving into why this hire is bigger than nostalgia, what Sturm's own words reveal about his mindset, and how his history with this team may shape its future, and specifically some of the younger players. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. You can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. I am a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I've been covering this team, the NHL, for various outlets for about 20 years now. Seen quite a few head coaches come through Boston in my day, and I'm actually pretty excited about Marco Sturm. I've seen a lot of noise on social media suggesting it's just another former player. It's not very creative or forward thinking. It's kind of safe. And they're just trying to play up the nostalgia card, which on social media, rightly so. They're posting videos from the 2010 Winter Classic, his famous goal to win it for them over the Philadelphia Flyers, just shortly before being reverse swept by Philadelphia in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But that's part of it too. And Marco Sturm was in Boston for a very important time in this franchise's trajectory. And it's believed that he will bring that mindset to the next wave of Boston Bruins. We all remember him arriving in the Joe Thornton trade in 2005. Everydayers will remember that was my first blog post about the Boston Bruins, was titled "Say It Ain't Joe." I was devastated about Joe Thornton being traded. The Bruins were in disarray. They had such a successful team heading into the 2004 playoffs, lost in the first round. Lockout comes, and they went on to a 29-win season. And it was pretty much a full-on rebuild cycle for that team. Moving on from your captain, who went on to win the Hart Trophy that season, and adding some foundational pieces in Zdeno Chara, Marc Savard, watching Patrice Bergeron emerge as a leader. And Sturm said it to Eric Russo of the Bruins website. He's been through it as a player here, almost exactly. They had to part with some good core guys. They had to make some decisions in terms of incorporating some young players into the mix. And you saw those growing pains through 2006, 7, 8, and then painful loss to Carolina in 2009, the reverse sweep at the hands of the Flyers in 2010, and they used that as motivation and a building block to get where they finally arrived in 2011. Sturm, various injuries, wasn't part of that club, but he was here for those tough, lean years. So this isn't new territory for Sturm. He's done this in Boston before. He knows the timeline, the pressure, and the culture inside out. But again, that's not the only reason he was brought in to coach the Boston Bruins. First, let's look at his international impact. He took over a floundering German national program and turned it into a competitive program that won a silver medal at the 2018 Olympics. Now, again, it wasn't best on best, but he did beat Sweden. He did beat Canada, both of which are deep hockey countries and can support competitive teams without the benefit of NHL players. They took the Russians to overtime in the gold medal game. He created structure and belief with a limited roster, turning a low expectation team into a Cinderella story. And he said, obviously, that experience definitely helped him, and it proved he can unite a locker room, manage egos, and outcoach more talented opponents. And actually, part of the coaching staff for Team Canada for that Olympics was Chris Kelly, who, of course, remains with the Bruins for the time being. And then from there, he went on to help develop a new culture in Los Angeles. The Kings had great success winning a couple cups more than a decade ago now, and then they too had a retooling process around a new wave of players. And he helped develop players like Quinton Byfield, who became a more complete defensive player and more confident overall. Brandt Clarke learned how to balance offensive risk and defensive structure. I saw a stat posted about how the Reigns power play last year was ranked 24th. Not very inspiring, but that's because in part due to Brandt Clarke having graduated from the AHL to the NHL. He's a power play quarterback. You lose him, you lose Alex Turcotte, who also made a move up. Yeah, you're going to suffer when it comes to talent and dropping things off. He earned a reputation as a player's coach, demanding but approachable, with an emphasis on long-term growth. So why now, and why Boston? Well, Sturm has coached at every level and succeeded with limited resources. And what makes it different is he knows the expectations in Boston, and he's not afraid of it. He said that's where he feels comfortable, to build teams up again and work with different types of players. Now, the Bruins, of course, did talk about evolving offensively, and that's still the goal. And again, you look at the Kings, you've seen a breakout from Quinton Byfield, from Brandt Clarke. But the Kings are also known for that defensive structure, and that's what helped them win a couple of cups, and that is still something that they tried to build their identity around, with Drew Doughty being a holdover. So make no mistake, he still will bring that modern offensive flair, but also that tough defensive identity. And he was part of creating the modern Bruins identity, and we'll discuss how he helped create that, as well as some players that he might have an ability to shape here in Boston, here as the podcast continues. Have you been looking at your personal finances and wondering where did all your money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's so easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much we were spending on different streaming services. We streamlined those, and now we budget smarter and save more. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, so which now before wrapping up by looking at how he's going to lean on his legacy in Boston and kind of pique the brain of some other Bruins that he has come in contact with over the past. Let's start with a guy like Mason Lohrei. Sturm just isn't taking over a team. He's inheriting a roster in transition. And his track record with young players and role-specific coaching makes him a key figure in shaping Boston's next core. Mason Lohrei is an offensive defenseman with some real top four potential. And Sturm's structured system will help refine Lohrei's gap control and defensive decision making. Maybe he can even take on a second pair role while still being activated in transition. We all know he's got high-end offensive talent and instincts, and he showed this past season that he could indeed quarterback a power play, but league low plus minus, there are some defensive deficiencies, and like a Brant Clark, perhaps Sturm, and hopefully Sturm can help make Lohrei a more well-rounded defenseman. Look at a guy like Matt Poitras, who is already mature beyond his years, very David Krejci-esque. Everydayers will remember me saying time and time again. Expect Sturm to give him perhaps some second-line center minutes with more offensive leash and some trust in key defensive matchups. He has definitely earned that, and he is a candidate to become a Krejci-style two-way leader over time. I'm expecting Matt Poitras to take great strides, not like a Byfield, because there's obviously a big difference in terms of style and size there, but in terms of playing like Sturm did, two-way, responsible, and able to elevate the guys that he plays with. Now, in terms of Fabian Lysell, this is a make-or-break training camp for him coming up. He's got the raw talent, but inconsistent results. He did look pretty good near the end of this season in that extended look that came after the deadline moves. And Sturm's developmental patience and emphasis on clarity could very well unlock Lysell's potential, or perhaps define his role more clearly moving forward. But the onus is on Lysell here. If he doesn't come in to training camp guns blazing and at peak potential, then this could very well be it for him if he isn't even included in a trade this offseason, which is very much a possibility. I look at other guys like Marat Hust-Nudinov, who's got a high motor and a relentless pace. Sturm will value that pace and his work rate, and he could become a third-line energy player and a fixture on the penalty kill. You look at a guy like Fraser Minton, two-way center with size, responsibility, IQ. He's a natural fit for a coach who rewards system adherence and work ethic. And he could really make the roster and stay with the right early season development. The same can be said of some other fringe roster players like Jacob Lauko if he's re-signed, John Beecher if he's re-signed, perhaps even Georgi Merkulov if he's if he is re-signed. His AHL track record is pretty great, Merkulov. And Sturm's AHL experience with similar high risk, high reward forwards means Merkulov may get a real shot to stick if, of course, he re-signs and if he buys into the system. Now, a guy like Casey Middlestad is interesting. He's not a prospect, but he's still evolving. There's some chatter out there that he too could perhaps be a candidate to be moved in a sacrifice to the salary cap. But I think he's a guy worth hanging on to. And Sturm's focus on communication and confidence could help Mittelstadt become a consistent top six forward and a power play asset. And this could be the coach that helps Mittelstadt hit another gear, a gear that he hit a couple years ago with Buffalo, failed to find in Colorado. But when you have a guy who was highly touted as a prospect, a high pick by the Buffalo Sabres, that's some real pedigree there and perhaps some untapped potential that is signed for fairly cheap. And I'm willing to give Mittelstadt an opportunity to see what can become of him under Marco Sturm. Now, again, make no mistake, Sturm, this team is going to be built on defensive responsibility. So Charlie McAvoy, Hampus Lindholm, Lohrei, Nikita Zadorov, whoever rounds out the top six, they're going to need to buy into his structure. If a player can handle that responsibility and work within a system, age and contract should not matter. That's good news for younger Bruins looking to take the next step and for veterans who need a fresh start. And I'm looking right at you, Jeremy Swayman. He's still the clear number one. And his Sturm's impact and potential influence on the goalie can't be overlooked. He's a coach with a two-way mindset, will demand goalie engagement in puck play and transition support, but will also demand that his defensemen do everything they can to support their goaltender. Sturm's team in the AHL was tight checking and low risk and disciplined in transition, key ingredients for supporting young goaltenders. And the Kings' defensive identity during his tenure as an assistant was also based on strong gaps, controlled exits, layered zone coverage, minimizing odd man rushes against. And for Swayman, this means fewer scrambles, clearer lanes, more predictable shot environments. So Sturm's experience as a forward gives him insight into how to frustrate offensive systems by denying those zone entries, collapsing smartly without screening the goalie, eliminating seam passes, and he'll expect his forwards to back check hard, close passing lanes, support the D breakout, the kind of commitment that makes life easier in net. Without a timeshare, and we still have to figure out what's going on with Joonas Korpisalo, but Swayman is expected to carry a heavier load, and what he'll need most is predictability, and that comes from team structure. So under Sturm, McAvoy, Lindholm, Lohrei, Zadorov will be tasked with executing simple, smart defensive reads instead of overcommitting or chasing pucks. Sturm's squads were among the league leaders in shots against per game, PK efficiency, limiting second chance opportunities. So if that defensive approach carries over, Boston could be a top 5 team in terms of goals against once again, even with just one elite starter. Swayman has the skill and mindset to be a Vezina contender, but the Bruins need to support him structurally to keep that ceiling realistic over a full season. Sturm's no-frills, accountable approach behind the bench can help Swayman. Got to trust what's happening in front of him, focus on first saves, play with confidence even when the offense isn't clicking. And with fewer breakdowns and better D-zone communication, Swayman's job is set to get simpler, and that could make him even better. And that's going to be key for the Bruins in terms of a quick retool is the play of Jeremy Swayman. Now, Sturm, of course, does have some connections to current and former Bruins. He knows the past isn't something to escape. It's something to honor and build on. And he'll do that by surrounding himself with familiar voices who understand what Bruins hockey truly means. And we'll discuss that here as the podcast continues. Apologies for the Fortnite screaming there in the background. It is a PA day here in Ontario, meaning the boys are off school. But we carry on here at the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast, talking about how Sturm acknowledged that there's a bunch of guys in and around the Bruins organization that he is going to be relying on to help get him up to speed. Like an Adam McQuaid, who's in player development, PJ Axelson in player development, Tuukka Rask, kind of a team consultant. He said those guys are leaders for a reason, and he wants them around, and he wants to get their opinions. There's also Patrice Bergeron, Zdeno Chara, who have an ongoing, unofficial, to date, presence with the Bruins. They're often around the rink and the organization, and Sturm views them as critical cultural anchors, even without formal roles. He said Bergie was his guy when he played here. Hopefully he can convince him to stop by once in a while too. I'm sure there'll be no strong work needed there. These voices help maintain standards in the room even when they're not on the ice. The Bruins have long had one of the strongest locker room cultures in the NHL. But again, Chara's gone. Krejci's gone. Rask is gone. Bergeron's gone. Now Brad Marchand is gone. Sturm, though, was here when that culture was starting to be cemented, and he knows the standard and expects accountability from top to bottom. Having voices like Bergeron and Chara nearby, McQuaid, Axelson, Rask in the organization, that ensures the identity will stay intact. At the end of the day, Sturm said, that's what people want to see. The Bruins get back to their identity and their culture. We also want to see the Bruins score goals, win games, but that family aspect is certainly part of it. And Sturm and his family lived in Boston during his playing days, loved the city by all accounts, the European feel to it, of course. Now with both of his children in college in the area, his coaching becomes a bit of a family reunion as well, which is pretty cool. He says they feel very, very comfortable in Boston. It's almost just like home. It wasn't their plan to come back, but they're so happy and so excited. You can see it on his face in those introductory videos. He actually lived kind of alone in LA for 7 years, chasing his dream, sacrificing family time, pursuing his coaching path. From Germany to the Kings to the Reign, now he's back in Boston. He chased his dream. He did it the hard way, and his family sacrificed a lot. So again, this is not just a nostalgia hire. Sturm has put in the work. He has paid his dues. He said he never thought he would be the head coach of the Boston Bruins, but here he is. His best memories hockey-wise were rooted in what happened in Boston, and that alone makes it more special. He wasn't seeking this opportunity. It came from his persistent preparation, his purpose. Now he's ready to guide the Bruins through their next transformation with the city, with his family, with the fans, for the most part, all behind him. So again, the hiring of Sturm as head coach of the Boston Bruins represents more than a sentimental return. It's a calculated move grounded in player development, culture, restoration, and structural clarity. A coaching resume that includes silver medal run with Germany, foundational work in the Kings organization, 3 strong seasons in the AHL. Didn't have the playoff success, but he's proven he can lead, teach, and evolve. And you got to remember, in the AHL, there's a lot of roster turnover. It's not a developmental league per se, but the goal for a lot of those guys is to make it to the NHL and develop so that you are graduating out of that. And that's what happened with some of the Reign's better players. He enters, of course, a pivotal moment in Boston's timeline. Core changes, youth movement, Swayman recapturing his number 1 goalie status, elite goalie status. Sturm's modern defensive structure, emphasizing gaps, support, transition control, should provide Swayman with exactly what he needs. Predictability, trust, fewer higher danger chances against. Players like Mason Lohrei, Matt Poitras, Fabian Lysell, Fraser Minton now have a coach known for elevating young talent through communication and accountability. Veterans like Casey Middlestat, newcomers like Husnudinov, Minton can stand to benefit from clearly defined expectations and roles. Sturm's presence also signals a return to identity, a rekindling of Bruins culture shaped by players like Bergeron, Rask, Chara, many of whom Sturm remains connected to. As he said himself, quote, "It's not going to just happen overnight. We have to be patient, but if everyone buys in, we're going to be fine." In short, this is a forward-thinking hire rooted in substance, not sentiment. A new chapter for the Bruins that honors the past while building a structure for the future. And I know a lot of people balk at harkening back to the past, but it's an important thing. And I do believe that Sturm is ready, qualified, and it's not just about the fact that he played for this team. It's easy to joke about that or pick at that or to say, who knows why the Bruins do what they do, or just keep going back to the same wells. But this is a case where a guy moved on, put in the work overseas, as well as in the AHL and the NHL. He's not, I don't consider him as part of the old boys club with the Bruins. He's not a guy who stuck around and was part of kind of that inner circle necessarily. He was a huge part of helping build this recent wave in terms of his veteran experience, his scoring, his defensive responsibility, shaping some young guys that were part of the Bruins' more successful years. The fact that he didn't achieve that as a player here will certainly just fuel him to help the team reach those heights as head coach. He's not like kind of what you consider to be like, you know, in the same class as even Don Sweeney or Cam Neely, Ray Bourque, Patrice Bergeron, Chara, Rask, all these guys. He's had 15 years well outside of the organization, honing his craft, and I think it will benefit the Bruins with him coming back here as head coach. That's it for this week's episodes of Locked On Boston Bruins, but you're going to want to keep it locked to this channel and on your favorite podcast app. If anything huge breaks, we will surely be reacting to it, as we always do. Check out Locked On NHL Game Night next. They're going through the Stanley Cup Final in great detail. Game 2 going tonight. It's available on the Locked On NHL channel on YouTube and your favorite podcast app. Please do take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. I've got a softball tournament tomorrow, so pray I don't pull a hammy, and that I'm back on Monday with a fresh episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.